Welcome to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the woods with 3 creepy true hiking horror stories that'll make you think twice before lacing up your boots. These aren't legends. They're the stories hikers never meant to leave behind. The trail was known as Elderbone Ridge, a 15-mile stretch cutting through a remote forest in the Pacific Northwest. On maps, it seemed relatively tame, well-marked, moderate elevation, and recommended for experienced hikers who preferred solitude. But locals never hiked it alone. The few who did either came back changed or didn't come back at all. Derek Goodman had heard the rumors, but he didn't believe in old ghost stories or whispered warnings from flannel-wrapped men at the bar. He was a military veteran, now a paramedic, who'd seen more than his fair share of real horrors: car crashes, burn victims, overdoses. A walk through the woods didn't frighten him. In fact, he was craving it. Time away from the noise of Seattle, the pressure of his job, and the recent death of his mother, who had always begged him to slow down and touch the earth every once in a while. So when he stumbled across an old Reddit thread discussing unhiked trails, Elderbone Ridge had called to him like a siren. He packed his gear, left a detailed plan with his roommate, and drove out on a crisp October morning, eager for silence. The first few miles of the hike were as expected: towering evergreens, the soft hush of the wind above the treetops, and the satisfying crunch of fallen needles beneath his boots. Derek had read somewhere that this stretch of forest hadn't been logged in over 100 years, which explained the thickness of the undergrowth and the sheer width of some of the trees. Moss grew up their trunks in thick green velvet, and old, toppled logs were hollowed out like coffins. He was making great time, covering about 5 miles by midday, when the trail narrowed and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees in seconds. It wasn't sudden like a storm. It was subtle, like walking into a different world. The air felt dense, and Derek could no longer hear birds. The wind had stopped, or at least he couldn't feel it anymore. The silence was uncanny, so complete it bordered on oppressive. It made him stop and take stock of everything. His breathing, the creak of his pack straps, the way the leaves trembled on a nearby branch even though there was no breeze. He dismissed the unease as psychological. Maybe the stories had gotten into his head. He had a long history of pushing through fear, and this wouldn't be any different. At mile 7, he found the first strange sign. It was a totem nailed to a birch tree, roughly carved from bone and wood, twisted into a vaguely humanoid shape. The thing had too many arms, and what looked like real teeth embedded in its face. It was weather-worn but intact, clearly crafted by human hands. Probably a prank or a leftover from some forgotten hiker's weird hobby, Derek thought. He took a picture, posted it to Instagram with the caption "Creepy AF," #Elderbone Challenge, and moved on, brushing off the eerie feeling crawling up his spine. Another mile passed before he found more. 5 more of the totems, each more elaborate and sinister than the last. One had hair, real human hair, knotted and tangled into its limbs like spiderwebs. Another had eyes, glass ones, but still unsettlingly lifelike. Derek didn't post these. Something about them felt different. Wrong. He thought about turning back but didn't.
Breathe?
Maybe. He wasn't scared. Not really. But the woods had changed. At mile 10, the fog rolled in. It was the kind of mist that didn't just obscure vision but made the air feel wet and heavy. Every breath tasted like stone and mildew. Derek tried using his GPS, but the signal dropped to 0. Even his compass needle spun erratically, twitching in short, nervous bursts like it didn't know which way was north anymore. He camped for the night, despite his better judgment. There was a natural alcove beneath an overhang of boulders that offered decent shelter, and he built a small fire. As darkness settled, he tried to distract himself with his Kindle, but the battery died within minutes. It had been fully charged. So had his phone, but that too went dark and wouldn't turn on again. Only the fire offered any sense of normalcy. That's when he began to hear it. At first, it was a rustling, like something moving just beyond the firelight. Too consistent to be wind. Too large to be a raccoon or squirrel. Derek sat motionless, listening. The sound moved in a wide circle around his camp. Then it stopped. A whisper followed. It was faint, barely audible, but he could swear he heard his name. Not shouted. Not spoken. Breathed. As if the forest itself was calling him. Derek! He jumped up, brandishing his hunting knife. Who's there? Silence. Then, laughter. A soft, giggling laugh. A child's. Derek's heart pounded in his chest. He moved to douse the fire but paused. The light was his only anchor, his only defense. He stayed up all night, eyes scanning the shadows. Every few minutes, the rustling returned, sometimes on one side of the camp, sometimes the other. And the whispers, always whispers. When dawn finally arrived, it brought no relief. Everything was still blanketed in fog. The trees looked closer together. The trail was gone. Gone. Derek searched the area for over an hour, retracing steps, checking landmarks. Nothing. It was as if the forest had rearranged itself while he slept. He pulled out the emergency flare gun from his pack, fired once. The red spark vanished into the mist.
No hecho.
No sign of rescue. At noon, he found the cabin. It wasn't on any map. It wasn't marked by any signs. It was small, wooden, and ancient. The roof sagged, covered in moss, and the windows were broken. But the door was intact, closed. It was either go inside or remain lost. He approached cautiously. His instincts screamed at him to turn away, but he needed shelter, direction, anything. The door creaked open at his touch. Inside, it was surprisingly clean, dusty, but intact. A cot in the corner, a table, a wood-burning stove. On the walls, symbols carved deep into the wood, spirals, runes, and a shape that looked like the totems outside. A figure with many arms. On the table was a journal. The entries were frantic, nearly illegible in parts, written in blocky, pressed handwriting. The author had been here for days, weeks. They couldn't leave. The forest wouldn't let them. Changed around them, whispered to them, called their name. The last entry was dated 10 years ago and ended with a single word. Run. Derek didn't sleep that night. The whispers came back. Louder. Closer. The door creaked open once around 3 a.m., but nothing entered. At least nothing he could see. When daylight broke again, he ran. He ran in random directions, climbing over deadfall, ducking through narrow paths, hoping something, anything, would break the loop. Around midday, he found the trail again, clear as day, just where it should have been. But something was wrong. He reached into his bag for his water bottle. The logo had faded. The plastic felt brittle. He checked his watch, dead. He checked his GPS, still no signal. And when he finally emerged from the trailhead, exhausted, bloodied, and wide-eyed, he found his car exactly where he left it. But the paint had peeled. The tires were flat. And a newspaper someone had shoved under his windshield wiper was dated October 2028. It was 2025 when he left. 3 years had passed. He'd only been gone 3 days. Or so he thought. Derek stood frozen beside his deteriorated car, the newspaper clutched in his trembling hands. The headline meant nothing. The date meant everything. October 18, 2028. He had entered the forest on October 15, 2025. 3 days. That was all he remembered. Yet the world had aged. His phone, once dead from the trail, now refused to even accept a charge. The USB port had corroded, and the plastic near the base was cracked like dry skin. Something had happened. Either time had warped or he had. When he flagged down a passing trucker, the man stared at him as though he were a ghost, bearded, gaunt, and caked in dried blood and mud. Derek explained he'd been hiking and gotten lost. He left out the whispers, the laughter, the eyes he'd glimpsed between tree trunks, the way the forest bent inward on itself like a hungry lung. No one would believe that part anyway. The authorities confirmed his identity, but their records showed a missing persons case. Opened in 2025, closed for lack of leads in 2027. His roommate had moved. His apartment long vacated. His job at the ambulance service had been terminated 2 years ago. A woman named Rita, whom he'd briefly dated in 2024, had gotten married. He watched a video of her wedding on YouTube with a numb stare in a motel room the Red Cross had placed him in. "I was gone 3 days," he repeated to the social worker. 3. She nodded gently and jotted something down. They ran blood tests, full psychological panels, sleep studies, MRI scans. Nothing indicated trauma, brain damage, or drug use. He passed every test. And yet Derek wasn't the same. He didn't feel time the same way anymore. Minutes slipped. Hours bled into each other. He would wake up convinced it was morning and find the sun setting. Entire conversations evaporated before he could register them. He started carrying a small notebook in his pocket to jot things down, like the man in the cabin had done. Every entry began the same. Still here. Still not back there. But then the dreams started. At first, they were vague. Trees rising impossibly high, leaves whispering in languages he didn't understand. Then came the totems, now burning, now crawling. He saw himself, or something that looked like him, moving through the forest not on 2 legs, but many. An insectal mockery. A man-shaped shadow with too many arms. And always, the same word, written on the trees, on the sky, in the eyes of the things he saw, return. He awoke some nights with splinters in his palms, despite no wood in the room. Mud under his fingernails. Once he found moss growing in the folds behind his knees. Another time he hacked up black sap into the sink. When he went to a doctor, they found nothing. One morning, Derek woke to find a wooden object on his bedside table. It was the first totem, the one he'd photographed on the birch tree. A small figure with too many arms and a mouth full of teeth, his teeth. He opened his mouth to scream and found one missing from his gum. No blood, just an empty socket. He tried burning the totem, but it wouldn't catch. Even gasoline wouldn't ignite it. When he buried it, it appeared again in his backpack the next day. He left Seattle, moved inland, Wyoming, then Arkansas, then Maine. Every time he thought he could settle, the dreams returned. Every time he tried to destroy the totem, it came back. And now other things began to follow. One evening, walking through the woods near his cheap cabin in Bangor, he spotted someone ahead on the trail. A woman, barefoot and wrapped in what looked like birch bark and moss. She stood motionless, staring at him. Derek called out. She turned her head too slowly. No human moved like that. Then, without blinking, she stepped behind a tree and vanished. Another night, his reflection lagged behind him in the mirror. He smiled a second too late. His teeth were wrong. Sharper, wider. He finally decided to return. Not to find answers. Not to reclaim anything. But because he knew if he didn't go back, the forest would come to him. It already had. So, on the first day of fall, 2029, Derek packed a single bag. He didn't leave a note. There was no one left to write one to. The motel clerk barely looked up as he turned in his key. He hitchhiked as far as he could, then walked the rest. The trailhead was unchanged. The sign still read Elderbone Ridge Loop, 15. 3 miles. Someone had spray-painted over the mileage in blood-red paint and added, "You've been here." He stepped into the forest. The trees welcomed him like old friends. The fog was waiting. Within an hour, the trail disappeared again. This time he didn't fight it. The whispers came quicker now. They said new things. "We missed you. You belong. Stay." He walked for hours without rest, without hunger. His body felt like it was floating. When he passed the spot where he had once found the first totem, there were now hundreds. Dozens of them hanging from trees like grotesque ornaments, some stitched from cloth, others from skin. All of them turned as he passed. He saw the cabin again on the second day. It had changed. It was taller now, broader, as if it had grown new wings. The wood was slick and black, like tree bark dipped in oil, and it breathed. Not visibly, but he could feel it. The way the air contracted and expanded with a soft, steady rhythm. He entered. The table was still there. So was the journal, now open to a page with fresh ink. "Welcome home, Derek." The journal flipped pages on its own. They were filled with names. Dozens of them. Some crossed out. Some written in frantic loops. Some repeated endlessly. One page was covered entirely with a single phrase. "Never left. Never left. Never left." Then he saw his name, written 23 times. On the last page, in small, neat handwriting, "You are the forest now." Derek felt something rise inside him, a pressure that had no origin. He stumbled to the cot and fell into a deep, colorless sleep. When he woke, the cabin was gone. He stood alone in a clearing, naked, covered in moss and thin bark-like skin. His fingernails had grown long and dark, like twigs. His bones creaked when he moved, and he was no longer Derek. He wandered the woods now, not as a man, but as something else. A guardian? A prisoner? A seed? Sometimes hikers saw him from a distance. A tall figure with too many arms. Sometimes whispering. Sometimes screaming. They always ran. Sometimes they didn't run fast enough. Kara Halloran had been hiking solo for years, not out of stubbornness or pride, but preference. She was a documentary sound designer and field recordist who found solace in the wilderness. Nature offered a raw kind of music, whined through pine needles, birdsong, rainfall over stone, the shift of snow on a slope. Her job was to find silence and the subtle beauty inside it. That made her selective about her locations. Remote, off-grid trails with as little human noise pollution as possible. It was during one of her routine excursions that she heard about the Echo Trail. It wasn't on most maps, not the state-issued ones or even the topographical charts used by backcountry enthusiasts. She learned about it from a weathered old ranger named Glenn at a roadside diner near Glacier National Park. "You're not going to find it on paper," Glenn told her, sipping black coffee with shaking hands. "Old tribal land. They never named it in English, but us locals call it the Echo Trail. 'Cause once you go in, it echoes you back. Not the you that comes out, the you that stays." Kara was intrigued. "Echoes you back?" she asked, flicking on her recorder. Glenn didn't notice or didn't care. He leaned in, voice low. "It mimics, remembers. You leave a piece behind, it uses it." She played dumb. "Uses it how?" He just shook his head. "If you're smart, you won't find out." That conversation haunted her for weeks. As someone who spent her life capturing echoes, reverberations of sound, fragments of the environment, it was impossible to ignore the metaphoric weight of what he'd said. In the end, curiosity won. She found the trail by accident, or at least that's what she told herself. Just off an old fire road, barely visible, nearly overgrown, marked by a faded blue ribbon tied to a crooked pine. She stood there for a long time, recorder in hand, watching the way the wind didn't seem to touch the branches at the entrance. A stillness lived here, the kind you only found inside ancient places that didn't want you there. But she stepped forward. The trail swallowed her. She began her usual process, setting up ambient mics at intervals, noting tree species, collecting wind data. The forest was dense and strange, full of trees she didn't recognize, some with twisted bark like twine, others with leaves shaped like knives. Birds sang at odd intervals, some in two-note patterns that didn't match any species she knew. Still, she recorded. By the third hour in, Kara noticed something unusual. When she played back her field recordings, there were extra sounds. Not overlay, not echo, not artifact. Additional layers. Voices, faint and distant. A footstep that didn't belong. Breathing that wasn't hers. It happened again, then again. At first, she thought maybe it was the forest itself playing tricks.
Audio pareidolia.
The brain inventing patterns. But then she heard herself. Not just a whisper, not a mimicry, her voice. On the playback, "Don't keep going." Clear, quiet, distinct. She froze, rewound, played it again, and again. Her voice, unmistakably hers, saying something she had not recorded. She flipped to a new clip, one recorded 10 minutes later. This time, it was her voice again. "Please stop." The forest buzzed around her. Trees leaned slightly toward the trail, as if trying to overhear. She looked up and saw no birds, no squirrels, no movement at all. Even the air felt still, expectant. She pushed on. 1 more mile. She recorded everything now. Breathless voice notes, ambiances, footfalls. But each playback carried more layers. The whispers multiplied. The new voice began to repeat her older statements, then modify them. Eventually, they began to respond to her. "Kara, I'm 3 hours in. The trail narrows here." Playback. Distorted echo. "You're not alone." She ripped off her headphones, heart pounding. She turned. No one there. Only trees. Her instincts screamed for her to leave. But the need to document, to understand, kept her rooted. That was the thing about obsession, it wore the mask of purpose. As dusk settled, she found a clearing and pitched her small one-person tent. She didn't light a fire, didn't need the heat, and she didn't want to ruin the audio quality with crackling wood. Instead, she turned on a parabolic mic aimed at the darkness, pulled her sleeping bag up, and tried to rest. At 1:23 a.m., she woke. Something had brushed the tent. Not an animal. She stayed still, listening. A slow drag, like fabric against bark. Then the zipper on the tent shuddered. Her hand reached silently for the field mic still running beside her. She slid on her headphones. Real-time monitoring. Nothing. Then, a voice. Again hers. Only this time it wasn't from the playback. It was outside. Softer than breath, urgent. "Let me in." She didn't move. Her fingers squeezed around the mic. Another whisper. Not hers this time. Male. Rough. "She won't." A third. Childlike. Playful. "Then we'll take her." Silence. The zipper trembled again. She lay frozen, heartbeat thundering. The sounds stopped. Hours passed. At dawn, she finally opened the tent. Nothing. Except a second mic sitting beside hers. Identical model. Same brand. Same scratches on the casing. It was hers. But she had only packed one. When she pressed play, it began with her own voice. "I'm recording this because I don't think I'll remember anything if I don't." Then another voice, hers again, but older, weathered, panicked. "They're not echoes. They're openings. Doors." Kara stared at the mic somewhere deep in the forest. Something moved. Not toward her. Away. Carrying her voice. Kara didn't pack up right away. She sat there in the dew-soaked clearing, gripping both recorders, her own and the one that looked exactly like it. She examined them closely. Every ding, every scratch was mirrored. The small chip on the bottom left corner of the casing, the half-peeled label on the side. The second mic wasn't a replica. It was her mic somehow duplicated. Or something else. She replayed the strange recording. Her voice, the first version. Calm but tinged with dread. "I'm recording this because I don't think I'll remember anything if I don't." Then, the second voice. Hers again, but deeper. Like it came from lungs that had breathed something no human ever should. "They're not echoes. They're openings. Doors." The audio popped. Something she'd only ever heard when recording thunderstorms or sonic anomalies. Then came the sound of dragging steps, brittle branches snapping, and a distant voice she couldn't identify, muttering in some half-language, distorted and reversed. She stuffed both recorders into her bag and started walking.
No breakfast. No coffee.
Just boots on soil, heart drumming like a warning. The trail had changed. The foliage was unfamiliar. The pines had needles that shimmered metallic under the morning sun. And the birdsong, if that's what it was, had a cadence she couldn't place. Like music made of non-instruments. A melody with no beginning or end. She tried to retrace her steps. That's what you did when lost. Always backtrack. But there were no footprints.
No markers.
And no signal. She activated her satellite beacon, a last resort for emergencies. The light blinked red.
No transmission.
The air grew heavier, not with heat or moisture, but with presence. The feeling of being watched not by eyes, but by the ground, the trees, the space between sounds. The silence here wasn't absence, it was listening. At a bend in the trail, she found a cairn. Rocks stacked neatly, balanced impossibly. 5 stones, each flatter than the last, topped with what looked like a microphone windscreen. Her windscreen. She pulled her mic from her pack. The windscreen was gone. She hadn't noticed. When she reached for the cairn, her fingers hovered inches away, trembling. Then she heard it. From the woods beside her, her own voice called, "Stop! Don't touch it!" She spun around. No one there. Again, from behind the cairn, "You have to leave." Then another voice, distorted and low, like something mimicking human cadence without understanding it. "You can't leave." She stepped back, heart in her throat. The cairn collapsed on its own. No wind.
No quack.
Just a deliberate fall. Something was wrong with time here. Or memory. Or self. She pulled out her notebook. On the first page, she'd written the date, October 12, 2029. Then, entry 1, entered Echo Trail. Sunny, 67° F. She flipped to the second page. It was filled with entries she hadn't written. Entry 2, heard my voice in the trees. It warned me. Entry 3, something is copying me. Not just my voice. My thoughts. Entry 4, the trees move when I'm not looking. I lost track of the sun. More pages. More entries. Entry 9, found a second recorder. My face is in the reflection. Entry 13, don't trust anything that speaks. Entry 14, don't trust me. The ink was her handwriting, but she hadn't written any of it. She kept walking, now whispering a steady stream of her own observations, trying to keep her mind tethered.
I'm Kara.
32. Born in Madison, Wisconsin. Sound engineer. Hiking Echo Trail. It's morning. I'm not hurt. I'm not crazy. A rustle behind her. She spun. Nothing. She pressed record. Let the mic run. A minute later, she played it back.
I'm Kara.
32. Born in Madison, Wisconsin. Her voice. Steady. Then another voice, buried beneath it. Her again. Overlapping. But I won't be for long. Her legs buckled. She sat on the path, breath shallow. The trees shifted around her. She blinked. Now she was in a different part of the forest. Not a clearing. A hollow. Circular, surrounded by trees that leaned inward like conspirators. In the center, a pool of water, black and still. She didn't remember walking here. Her GPS map was blank. She circled the pool. Then she saw herself. Reflected. But the reflection didn't move with her. It stood still, staring up. Kara leaned down. The reflection smiled. Not a kind smile. A sharp one. The reflection raised its hand and pointed behind her. She turned. A figure stood at the edge of the hollow. Tall. Thin. Wearing her jacket. Her pack. Her face. Tilted its head, curious. Then it said, "We're learning to be you." Kara ran. Branches clawed at her jacket. Something sharp grazed her ankle. She didn't stop. Behind her, laughter echoed. Multiple voices. All hers. All wrong. She stumbled into a grove of dead trees, their bark black and flaking like ash. In the center, someone had carved symbols into the dirt. Circles within circles. The echo of a spiral. At the center, a stone. Not a natural one. A recorder, half buried. She knew it was hers. But this one had dried blood on the mic grill. She reached for it, then froze. From the trees, static.
Pure audio statique.
It filled the air, not loud, but dense. A sound that weighed. Then, from behind her, a voice whispered. Her voice. I remember you. She screamed and ran again. Hours passed. Or minutes. The forest was eternal now. When she stopped, she found a wooden sign. Rotted but readable. Welcome to the Echo Trail, a loop of reflection. Beneath it, scratched in with what looked like fingernails. You won't know you left. Kara's legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed beside the warped sign, hands scraped, breath coming in short gasps. Her entire body trembled, not from exertion, but from something deeper. A fracture in her understanding of where she was, who she was. The sign felt like a warning and a threat all at once. You won't know you left. She sat there for a long while, trying to focus on her breath, the dirt beneath her palms, the taste of metal in her mouth. But even the basics betrayed her. The air didn't smell like forest anymore. It smelled like static, like a sound studio that hadn't been grounded properly, ozone, heat, and a faint burning. She took out her mic and recorder again. Just holding them gave her some sense of control. Tools. Familiarity. She pressed record and let it roll while she whispered. My name is Kara Halloran. This is a documentation of a phenomenon on the so-called Echo Trail. I believe I am experiencing a form of auditory duplication or manipulation. Possibly localized. Possibly cognitive in origin. I am unable to verify objective sound anymore. There are multiple instances of my own voice repeating things I have not said. The voices have begun. She stopped. From the recorder, not even fully engaged in playback, her voice finished the sentence in a perfect whisper. Begun thinking for me. She dropped it. It landed in the dirt and kept rolling. Stop it. She hissed at the woods. Stop using my voice. Something moved across the path in front of her. Not fast. Smooth. Gliding. She caught only its outline, a lanky shape, too tall, with arms that didn't swing. It was silent except for a low crackling hum, like a detuned radio. No eyes. No face. Just motion. It disappeared behind a tree. Gone. Kara didn't chase. She stayed still. Then the recorder clicked. Playback started automatically. At first, wind, breath, silence. Then, again, her voice, unmistakably hers, saying something she had not recorded. She flipped to a new clip, one recorded 10 minutes later. This time, it was her voice again. Please stop. The forest buzzed around her. Trees leaned slightly toward the trail, as if trying to overhear. She looked up and saw no birds, no squirrels, no movement at all. Even the air felt still, expectant. She pushed on. 1 more mile. She recorded everything now. Breathless voice notes, ambiances, footfalls. But each playback carried more layers. The whispers multiplied. The new voice began to repeat her older statements, then modify them. Eventually, they began to respond to her. Kara, I'm 3 hours in. The trail narrows here. Playback. Distorted echo. You're not alone. She ripped off her headphones, heart pounding. She turned. No one there. Only trees. Her instincts screamed for her to leave. But the need to document, to understand, kept her rooted. That was the thing about obsession, it wore the mask of purpose. As dusk settled, she found a clearing and pitched her small one-person tent. She didn't light a fire, didn't need the heat, and she didn't want to ruin the audio quality with crackling wood. Instead, she turned on a parabolic mic aimed at the darkness, pulled her sleeping bag up, and tried to rest. At 1:23 a.m., she woke. Something had brushed the tent. Not an animal. She stayed still, listening. A slow drag, like fabric against bark. Then the zipper on the tent shuddered. Her hand reached silently for the field mic still running beside her. She slid on her headphones. Real-time monitoring. Nothing. Then, a voice. Again hers. Only this time it wasn't from the playback. It was outside. Softer than breath, urgent. Let me in. She didn't move. Her fingers squeezed around the mic. Another whisper. Not hers this time. Male. Rough. She won't. A third. Childlike. Playful. Then we'll take her. Silence. The zipper trembled again. She lay frozen, heartbeat thundering. The sounds stopped. Hours passed. At dawn, she finally opened the tent. Nothing. Except a second mic sitting beside hers. Identical model. Same brand. Same scratches on the casing. It was hers. But she had only packed one. When she pressed play, it began with her own voice. I'm recording this because I don't think I'll remember anything if I don't. Then another voice, hers again, but older, weathered, panicked. They're not echoes. They're openings. Doors. Kara stared at the mic somewhere deep in the forest. Something moved. Not toward her. Away. Carrying her voice. The path felt alive. Not metaphorically. Kara could feel the trail moving beneath her boots. Subtle, like breathing. The moss pulsed with every step she took, releasing puffs of spores that shimmered in the thin, eerie light filtering through the canopy. The forest was more than an ecosystem now, it was aware, listening, remembering, and Kara was still holding the map. She'd stared at it for what felt like hours. 2 markings stood out. Exit in sharp black ink, and she stays, circled in a bleeding red spiral. There were no landmarks, no elevation lines, just directional turns and a short note at the bottom. One of you must remain to close the loop. One of you must forget. Kara didn't know who had written it. Maybe herself. Maybe a version of her that had walked this path before. Maybe the forest itself. It didn't matter. The rules were made. The cost laid bare. She kept walking. Her gear felt heavier now, as if burdened by memory rather than mass. Her pack creaked and groaned with every shift, echoing through the still trees louder than it should have. Her water bottle, half empty, sloshed like a restless heartbeat. She refused to drink. She didn't trust the trail water anymore. Didn't trust her supplies. Didn't trust her senses. Hours passed. Maybe days. The sun didn't rise or set. It stayed suspended, an unchanging golden smear through dense clouds. Her watch had stopped. Her backup digital recorder, powered by fresh lithium batteries, flashed a single word across the screen when she checked it. Looping, Kara hissed and turned it off. Another hour. Another bend. Then, she heard footsteps. Not behind her. Ahead. She stopped. They stopped. She walked again, slowly. The footsteps matched hers, then exceeded them. She reached a curve in the path and froze. There, up ahead, barely visible between 2 trees, was another figure. It was her. Again. But this time, younger. No pack. No equipment. Wearing clothes she hadn't owned in 10 years. An old green hoodie, jeans, and Converse. Her 22-year-old self. The younger Kara looked at her with wide, frightened eyes. She backed away, stumbled, then bolted into the trees.
Kara shouted.
Wait! She chased. Branches whipped her face. Roots clawed her boots. The forest tried to slow her, but she pressed forward. She caught up in a clearing, a perfect circle of grass and stone. No wind.
No birds.
No movement. The younger Kara stood in the middle, sobbing. I can't leave again, she whispered. You're not real. You're the echo.
Kara approached slowly.
I'm not. You're from the past. I think I was, the girl snapped. But now I'm just the prelude. The one that gets scared. That hears the whispers first. The one that stayed. She pointed upward. Kara looked up. The sky wasn't sky anymore. It was a dome of mirrors. Hundreds of panes angled to reflect the clearing. Each mirror showed a different Kara. One climbing a rock wall. One asleep in a tent. One in an interview room crying. One dying.
Kara Steggeret.
What is this? The younger Kara whispered. The forest remembers all of us. It just decides which one gets out. A shadow passed across the mirrors. The light flickered. Something descended from above. Not a being. A sound. Low. Constant. Apureton. Like a sine wave with mass. Pressed against Kara's chest, crushing her breath. It wasn't coming from any device. It was the forest. A voice layered over it. Her own again, but now foreign. Unanchored. You can exit now, it said. But she stays.
No Kara Grovled.
The younger version of her looked up, tears drying on her cheeks. You want to leave, she whispered. But leaving means becoming the echo. The rest of you will dissolve. Kara stared at her hands. They were transparent. Flickering. No, she whispered. No, no. You've already started forgetting, the girl said. And Kara had. She couldn't remember her parents' names. She couldn't recall the layout of her apartment. She couldn't remember who she'd called last before the trip. She turned back to the trail. Path had opened. At its end, sunlight, normal trees, sky, a dirt road, parked ranger jeep. Home. The voice returned. She stays. You exit. The loop will close. Kara turned to the girl in the clearing. I can't do that. You have to.
No.
There has to be another way. There isn't.
Kara Girittet Hertit, Trembling.
Then she did something she didn't expect. She ran. Not toward the exit. Not toward the girl. She ran in the opposite direction. Into the forest. The path closed behind her. Branches knitted together. Trees leaned in. The voice, angry now, screamed. You break the loop. You break yourself. She didn't stop. Not until the trail spit her out into a grove so silent it felt like time had paused. There she found a new clearing. In its center, a stone altar. On it, her recorders. All of them. 6 of them. Every version she'd lost or thought she'd packed away over the years. Each marked with a different version of her initials.
Kahat. Kaha Kera Hag Haloran.
Each one bore recordings. She picked one up. Pressed play. There is no exit, her voice said. Only trade. If you're hearing this, you ran too. Welcome. Then silence. Then dozens of voices, all hers, all in chorus. Welcome. 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 She dropped the recorder. As she stepped back, the altar cracked. A hand emerged. Her hand. A third version of her climbed out of the stone. Skin like polished wood. Eyes black as the recorder's. It looked at her and said, Ready to merge?
Kara Skreimim.
Then it lunged. The thing that looked like her didn't move like a person. It slithered in bursts, limbs folding wrong, head cocked in twitching angles. Its body was shaped like Kara, but hollow in all the wrong places, like it had grown from memory, not muscle. Its voice was Kara's voice, but filtered through static, reverb, and old tape hiss. Each syllable it spoke lagged, as if playback had degraded from years of overuse. Ready to merge? Kara backed away. I'm not you. It tilted its head and smiled, a jagged rip in its face where a mouth should have been. No, you're not you. Not anymore. It lunged. Kara ducked, heart hammering as the creature missed her by inches and crashed into the altar. The recorders scattered. Some split open, spilling their spools. Others clicked alive on their own. From all of them, her voice screamed in 100 overlapping timelines. Don't let it touch you. Bury the voice. Leave the sound behind. Forget me. Forget you. Forget. The creature twisted, convulsed, then stood upright again. But now its skin had changed. Instead of wood, it was now flesh. And worse, it had her face again but aged forward. Wrinkles, sunspots, a scar she didn't have yet. It was her, but from a future she hadn't lived. It walked slowly. You're collapsing, it said. All the Karas that came before. All the Karas that will come. You thought you were the only one. Kara turned and ran. Her body screamed in protest, but she ran. Through trees that leaned too close, past twisted shrubs, over gnarled roots that seemed to rise to trip her. The forest no longer resembled any natural place. It had changed entirely. The trees were mirrored now, showing her reflections not just of herself but her others. The terrified 22-year-old, the echo from the clearing, the face she didn't recognize. Then the world blinked. Everything stuttered. The soundscape glitched, birdsong reversing, wind dropping in tone until it became a growl. Her ears popped like she was falling from a great height. When she looked down, her shadow was no longer following her. It was running ahead, mimicking her future. She chased it, unsure why. It led her to a stone circle, ancient, slick with moss, humming with low-frequency vibrations that pulsed up through her boots and into her bones. In the center of the circle, a door, not a metaphor, a real, iron-framed, wooden door, standing upright with no walls around it. A sign above read, "Egress point on the handle." A single word burned into the brass. "Forget." The door creaked open slightly. Light poured out. The creature, her older self, was behind her now, steps away. "You go through that," it hissed. "You leave everything behind. Not just this place. Not just me. Your work. Your sound. Your name." Kara turned to face it, chest heaving. "I know." The creature tilted its head again, curious. "Then why would you?" Kara stepped toward the door. "Because if I don't, this trail never ends. I keep coming back. I become you." She opened the door. Inside, a white void, not bright, empty. The forest screamed. Every tree split. Every recorder buzzed to life. Every version of her cried out in fury, grief, or warning. The forest panicked. The creature lunged. Kara turned and threw her last recorder into its mouth. The static exploded in volume, tearing at the air, distorting the creature's shape into shards of broken audio. And then Kara stepped through the door, into silence. True silence. No breath, no pulse, no thought, just absence. When she woke, she was lying in a hospital bed. A ranger had found her wandering along an access road near Glacier National Park, dehydrated and barefoot, repeating the same sentence over and over. "I am not the echo. I am not the echo." They found no ID on her, no pack, just a small audio recorder in her jacket pocket. It had no files on it. She didn't remember her name. She gave them the only one that felt real, Kara. Over time, she remembered how to speak, eat, sleep, but she never recorded again. Every time she tried, the recorder glitched. Or worse, it spoke first. Years passed. She moved to a city, changed her name, worked in a quiet bookstore. But sometimes, late at night, as she passed by mirrored windows or listened to the hum of an air conditioner, she'd hear a voice say, "You left me there." And from the darkness beyond the reflection, something that looked like her would whisper, "You don't know which one you are." The trail was called Hollow Creek, a 6-mile loop etched into the northern hills of Pennsylvania. It wasn't a well-known path. It wasn't listed on official park maps or GPS hiking apps. If you asked the locals, some would claim it was decommissioned after a rockslide in 1992. Others would simply say, "Don't go there. The woods don't like to be walked twice." No one told Josh and Tessa that. They were from New York, weekend warriors who had taken to hiking to offset the grind of their Manhattan lives. She was a pediatric nurse. He was a graphic designer with a penchant for photography and trail journaling. They chased solitude, not danger. They weren't thrill seekers, just nature lovers. And Hollow Creek had been a Reddit recommendation from a travel blog, Hidden Hikes for Hardcore Hikers. That was enough for Josh. "Come on," he told Tessa the night before, packing the last of their dehydrated meals and waterproof gear. 6 miles. Light elevation. Barely a 3-hour loop. "It'll be nice." Tessa had hesitated at the name. Hollow Creek? Doesn't that sound kind of, I don't know, ominous? Sounds poetic, he said, grinning. Probably just a dried-up stream. They drove up Friday afternoon, camped at a primitive site nearby, and started at dawn. For the first hour, the hike was idyllic. The sun filtered through mist like golden silk. Birdsong blanketed the canopy. Trees arched over the trail in cathedral-like silence. Even the stream beds sparkled in morning dew. Josh took photos. Tessa took notes. They moved in an easy rhythm, laughing at squirrel chatter and comparing the scent of cedar to Christmas. Then came the markers, red triangles, painted on trees at shoulder height, every 50 feet or so. At first, they thought nothing of them. Just trail markers, common on unmaintained paths. But there were too many, clustered together sometimes. Always the same symbol, an inverted triangle with a slash through the center. Not spray paint, brushed, carefully, ritualistically, like someone had taken their time. Then came the sound, a high-pitched chime, like wind passing through glass. Faint, just a note or two, sustained longer than natural. Josh stopped. Did you hear that? Tessa froze. What was it? He lifted his phone, pressed record. But the mic captured nothing, just wind. They pressed on. At mile 4 they found the stone. It jutted from the hillside like a broken tooth. Carved into its face was a pattern of symbols. Some letters, some not. Tessa leaned closer. It's a language, she said. Cyrillic? Maybe Nordic. Josh photographed it. A second later, his camera shut off. Battery drained. Didn't we charge this last night? He asked. Tessa's phone was at 10%. Hers had been full too. They turned back. But there was no trail. Not behind them. Just forest. No red markers. No broken trees from their passage. No snapped branches. No footprints in the dirt. Josh laughed nervously. We're just disoriented. Tessa's hand was shaking. No, we aren't. Look. She pointed at the stone again. It now had a different symbol. The inverted triangle with the slash. They didn't talk. They just moved. Fast. Back the way they thought they'd come. After 10 minutes, they were at the stone again. Josh swore. This doesn't make sense. Tessa knelt and touched the carving. Then screamed. Her hand jerked back, bleeding from a fresh gash across her palm. The stone had cut her. But not like a sharp edge. More like something had pushed out from the rock to slice her. Blood smeared the red triangle. The chime rang again. Closer. Tessa wrapped her hand. We're not lost, she whispered. We're trapped. They ran now. The trail unfolded in nonsense directions. Trees rearranged. The moss grew backward on trunks they'd passed earlier. The sun no longer moved, and the markers began to change. Where once they were painted, now they were cut, gouged into bark, the wood oozing black sap. Then they came across a tent. Old, faded blue, collapsed, covered in leaves. Josh approached, lifted the flap. Inside, a skeleton. Clothes still clung to the frame. A backpack lay beside it. A notebook half buried in debris. He pulled it free, flipped to the last entry. If you see the red markers turn white, don't follow them. That's not the way out. That's the bait. Tessa grabbed his shoulder. Josh! She pointed to a nearby tree. The marker had turned white. They looked behind them. So had the last one. The trail ahead showed more. Dozens of them. All white now. A hum filled the air. Subsonic. Felt rather than heard. Josh took Tessa's hand. And they ran. They ran until their lungs burned. Until sweat soaked through their shirts. And their legs trembled with the weight of panic and fatigue. The trail was no longer a trail. Just a sequence of illusions between the trees. Twists of terrain that felt rehearsed, unnatural in their arrangement. Like walking on a stage that reset behind you when you weren't looking. The red markers were gone. Now they were all white. Every tree bore the same bleached triangle with the black slash through the center, each one slightly off-kilter. as though painted in haste or excitement. The forest around them had changed. What had once been green and golden in the morning light was now colorless, every tree drained of saturation, bark gray as ash, leaves a pale yellowed paper. Light filtered in from no clear direction. There was no sun overhead. The shadows all pointed toward them. Josh slowed as the terrain dipped sharply. We're looping. This is all just... He looked back. The markers they'd passed had vanished. The trees were blank again. Tessa dropped to her knees, clutching the cut in her palm. The blood had stopped flowing, but the wound now had a ring of gray forming around it, like her skin was dying or changing. She bit down on panic. We passed that rock before, she said. Josh looked. A large black stone with 3 cracks near its base. Yes.
Familiar.
But it had moved. It was on the wrong side of the trail now. We're not just looping, she whispered. The trail's watching us. Josh approached the rock cautiously. No carvings this time. No red symbols. Just stone and silence. Then the humming started again. Soft, low, musical. It rose not from any clear direction, but from the air itself, like the forest was vibrating. And beneath it, voices, whispers, first faint, then louder. They always follow. Don't let them think. This is how you make more of us. Josh spun. Who said that? The woods were still. Then crack. A branch snapped behind them. They both turned toward the sound and saw something impossible. A child. A young girl, no older than 10, standing barefoot in the trees, her dress tattered, her face unreadable. Her hair was long, pale, matted with leaves. She stared at them with eyes too wide, too black. Josh took a step forward, but Tessa grabbed his arm. No, she whispered. Look. The girl was holding something, a red triangle, cut from leather, sewn crudely to her sleeve. Then her mouth opened, and their own voices came out. Josh, this way, Tessa. Tessa, keep going, don't stop. Overlapping, distorted, like recordings played too slow then too fast. Then the girl blinked and split. Another figure stepped out of her. Identical. Then another. Now there were 3, 4, each holding a red triangle, each blinking out of sync, each muttering versions of Josh and Tessa's words from earlier in the hike. Josh backed away. They're us.
No, desabrid.
They're what's left. One of the figures, now looking like Josh, tilted its head and smiled. It mouthed a word he didn't say aloud, but felt in his head. Stay. They turned and fled. For the next hour, the trees closed in. The roots became knotted traps. The sky turned violet, then black, though no stars appeared. They no longer had any sense of direction or time. Then they saw it. A cabin. At the edge of a ridge, where the land dropped away into fog. Small, rotted, roof sagging. A porch cluttered with wooden wind chimes and bones. Human bones. Despite every instinct, they went inside. The door creaked. Dust and silence greeted them. Then a voice. A man. Calm. Recorded. A radio on a shelf clicked on. If you're hearing this, you're in the loop. Josh froze. Don't trust the red markers. The voice continued. They change. They copy. They become white when the trail decides it wants you. It remembers the first step you took. It builds the rest. The radio crackled. Leave the pack behind. Leave the voices. Leave the name. Walk north without sound. Do not speak. Do not listen. The radio clicked off. Josh turned to Tessa. What does that mean? She was staring at the wall, where hundreds of photos were nailed. Every one showed hikers. All ages. Different times. Faded film and modern phone prints alike. And among them, photos of Josh and Tessa. One of them standing beside the red stone. One of Tessa kneeling, hand bleeding. One of Josh, staring into the woods, eyes wide with horror. Photos that no one had taken. They backed away from the wall. The humming returned. The cabin shuddered. Outside the door, they heard footsteps, dozens of them, marching in unison. The red-marked children, the copies, the trails collectors. Josh whispered, "What if this isn't just a trail? What if it's a trap? A system built to create echoes?" Tessa grabbed his hand. "We don't speak. We don't listen. North." They slipped out a back window, bodies tight with tension, landing in mud.
No voices.
No words. They moved like ghosts between trees, following a compass app that kept glitching but always returned to one bearing, north. They walked for hours. No talking.
No sounds.
Even their breath was slow, controlled. Behind them, the voices chased. Not running, just speaking. Fragments of their conversations. Words they didn't remember saying. "Why did we come here? This place feels wrong. It's just 6 miles." Over and over. Josh led. Tessa followed. The trees changed again. Now warped and thin, branches brittle like wire. Bark peeled back to reveal moving veins of red. They reached another ridge. Beyond it, open sky. Clearing. A wooden sign. Josh exhaled. The sign read, "Trailhead, Hollow Creek Loop. 2 miles. They had made it. But when they turned around, there were 3 more Joshes and 3 more Tessas staring back at them from the woods, pale and quiet. Each lifted a red triangle. Then the sign flickered, and the words changed, "You have exited, but not alone." The clearing was too perfect. Josh knew it the moment they stepped onto the mossy ground. It wasn't just the shape, an almost flawless oval surrounded by birch and hemlock, but the stillness. Even the bugs were quiet. No wind.
No birdsong.
The air felt contained, like a room sealed from the outside world. Tessa stood beside him, her face tight with exhaustion. Mud streaked her cheeks. Her injured hand wrapped in gauze ripped from the bottom of her shirt. She was breathing hard, but not from exertion. From dread. Behind them, the red-marked replicas watched from the treeline. Motionless. Faces slack and hungry. Unblinking. Josh pulled Tessa toward the sign again. It had definitely changed. It no longer read Trailhead, Hollow Creek Loop. It read, "Echo Register Complete." And beneath it, "Confirm Duplication." A metal box had emerged from the ground beside the sign, as if lifted by unseen machinery. The screen glowed faint green. A message blinked in block letters. Primary Unit. JH, TQ-90, Orig Secondary Unit. JH, TQ-90-03A ready for archival. Tessa stepped back. What the hell is that? Josh reached toward it, only to freeze as the screen blinked again. Interference detected. Purge initiated. From the trees, the copies started walking forward. One of them, a version of Tessa with hollow eyes and mouth stitched in a perpetual grin, raised her hand. A triangle now glowed on her palm, etched in fire. Josh grabbed Tessa. Run. But where? The forest had closed in. The trail they thought they'd emerged from was now a corridor of mirrored trees, reflecting distorted images. Some showed them running, others frozen, trapped. One mirror held a still shot of them bleeding in a field, unmoving. They had no time. The first copy reached the clearing, its feet not touching the ground. It floated in short, sharp bursts like it was glitching through reality. Josh turned to the device again, desperate. The screen now offered a choice. Export. Restore. Erase Orig. He didn't understand it, but the copies were almost upon them. Tessa screamed. Then she saw something. Another path. Behind the sign. Narrow. Hidden beneath a wall of brambles. Now shifted aside as if by invitation. It glowed red. Red. Not white. The journal said white is bait. She gasped. Red might be the exit. Josh hesitated, then followed her through the opening. As they ran, the terrain around them twisted like a funhouse. Trees bending inward, dirt shifting color from brown to ashen white. Roots curled upward like skeletal fingers, and overhead, The sky blinked between day and dusk, no sun in sight. The red markers continued, but now they were drawn in blood, finger-painted onto bark, and each one bore a set of initials. Tessa stopped at one. TW. Her initials. She reached out. The moment her fingers touched the mark, a memory flooded in. Not hers. Another hike. Another person. A woman years ago running this same trail. Alone. Then screaming. Then silence. Tessa pulled her hand back. Josh was at the next tree. His initials were there, too. Josh, she whispered. This trail, it's not just copying us. It's absorbing us. The red line continued into the deep hollow ahead. Fog clung to the ground like breath. As they entered, the red markers became portraits, drawn in thick, finger-smeared blood on tree trunks. Faces, recognizable and warped, their own. One smiling, one crying, one rotting. Josh gagged. Tessa pressed on. The fog parted into a second clearing, this one filled with mirrors. Dozens. Hanging from branches, embedded into tree trunks, balanced on stone. Each mirror reflected a version of them. Not metaphoric versions, true duplicates. In one, Tessa was old. In another, she was a child. In yet another, she was skeletal, eyes sunken and mouth open in a scream. In Josh's mirrors, some versions were wounded, others dressed in different clothes. One was blindfolded. One held a severed triangle in his teeth. They passed through slowly, watching their fractured selves watch them back. At the center of the mirror grove stood a pedestal. On it, a single marker, red, fresh, vet. And beneath it, a pair of headphones and a tape recorder. Josh looked at Tessa. Do we listen? She shook her head, but something inside him pulled him forward. He pressed play. The voice on the tape wasn't his, or Tessa's. It was older, male, British accent. This is subject 11G, Hollow Creek experimental loop. Day unknown. Loop integrity degraded. Red markers now override bait system. Entity resistance growing. Then static. Then, if you find this tape, do not attempt extraction. Do not return to the clearing. The loop adapts. The loop sees you. Josh dropped the recorder. It hit the ground with a squelch, not a thud. The earth beneath their feet was changing. Becoming soft. Spongy. Breathing. Tessa grabbed him. No more recordings. No more voices. This place doesn't want an audience. It wants versions. The trees groaned. Behind them, laughter. From every direction. The forest had closed again. Josh and Tessa ran, through fog, past mirrors that shattered as they passed, until they hit another path. This one bore no markers, just silence, and a sign with 3 letters scratched into the bark, ND. The sign was simple, just 3 carved letters, END. Not painted, not hung, carved deep, as though the forest itself had bled the word into bark. Josh stood before it, breath fogging the air in long, ragged clouds. His skin was pale, lips bluish. They had run through realities, through shapes of their own identities reflected back like taunts. And now an end? Could it really be that? Tessa stood beside him, hand gripped tight around the remains of her bandage. The gray ring on her palm had spread halfway up her forearm, like mold crawling up a dying tree. But she didn't complain. She just watched the trees, the mirrors, the shapes. The laughter had stopped. But silence here wasn't peace. It was the breath before a scream. We go through, Josh whispered. Tessa nodded. The END trail was narrow, only wide enough for single file. It sloped downward at first, then straightened, then twisted. It wasn't consistent terrain anymore. One moment their feet struck wet leaves, the next, gravel, then stone, then something like flesh, soft, bouncy, and wrong. No sounds accompanied their descent. Even their own steps seemed muted, as though the forest was muffling them, trying to forget them. They walked for what felt like an hour. Then the path opened into a small grove lit by an unseen light source. In the center stood a building. Not a cabin. Not a ranger station. It was a room. For white walls.
No roof. No windows.
Just standing there, fully furnished, like someone had sliced it out of a suburban home and dropped it into the woods. Inside, a sofa, a coffee table, a floor lamp, a television, and on the couch sat Josh. Not a copy, not a monster. Josh, same clothes, same hair, same cut on his forehead from earlier. He looked up and smiled weakly at the two standing at the edge of the room. "Took you long enough," he said. Tessa stepped forward slowly. "Josh?" The Josh beside her didn't speak. He was frozen, every muscle tight. The Josh on the couch side stood up. "I'm real," he said. "You left me behind at the clearing. When we heard the first whispers, remember? You turned right. I turned left. I've been stuck here." Josh, the one who had made it this far, shook his head.
No.
"We never split." "You think we didn't," said Couch Josh. "But Hollow Creek, it edits." He walked forward. Tessa stepped between them. "How do we know who's real?" Couch Josh pointed at her. "She's not. She's the bait. That wound." He pointed to her arm. "You saw it grow. What do you think that is?" Josh looked at Tessa. She backed away.
No.
"No, you know me. I found the tape. I found the red trail. Couch Josh held out his hand. "Let me show you." Josh didn't take it. Instead, he turned to Tessa. "Let me see your hand." She hesitated, then slowly unwrapped the gauze. The flesh underneath had changed. It was no longer skin. It was a mirror, polished, seamless. Where flesh had been, there was now reflection. And in it, Josh saw only himself. Tessa dropped the bandage and stumbled back. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no, no." The mirror hand shimmered, shifted, then spoke. "I thought this one would last longer," the voice said. Josh stepped back. Tessa, what had been Tessa, twitched. Her face softened, and then slid off like a mask, revealing a hollow space where her head should have been. Inside, gears, glass, microphones. Josh turned and ran. Not down the path. Into the room. Couch Josh was gone now. Vanished. In his place, on the coffee table, sat a red triangle. Bleeding. Next to it, a phone. Josh's. Still charged. The screen was unlocked. A single video sat open. Timestamp. Tomorrow. Title. Last known footage. The real Josh. He pressed play. The video showed the grove. Himself. Running. Panicked. Turning to the camera. Whispering. "They made copies. I tried to warn them. They took Tessa. I don't know if I'm me anymore. If you find this, don't leave anything behind. Not even your name." Josh dropped the phone. From the woods outside, he heard a chorus of footsteps. Hundreds. Marching. The red-marked things were coming. He grabbed the triangle, not knowing why. Instantly, a doorway opened behind the television. A dark passage. Concrete walls. Red emergency lighting. Inside, a metal sign. Exit. Purge to follow. He stepped in. The door slammed behind him. He walked. The passage twisted, narrowed. Then he emerged into blinding light. A trailhead. Rangers. An ambulance. A woman's voice. "We found him." The world blurred. He passed out. Josh woke in a hospital. 2 broken ribs. Severe dehydration. No memory of the past 48 hours. That's what the staff told him. But Josh remembered. They said they found him at the Hollow Creek trailhead. Alone. No sign of Tessa. Her gear? Never found. His journal? Gone. All that remained was a red triangle sewn into the lining of his jacket. He didn't remember putting it there. The nurses took it. He never saw it again. The next week, back in the city, Josh tried to look up the trail. Hollow Creek. No such trail existed. The GPS coordinates he had recorded led to an abandoned coal site closed in the 1970s. No forest.
No loop. No Tessa.
He checked his phone. The video was gone. The only thing left was a new note in his app. A single sentence. We remember for you. Josh didn't return to the woods. Not ever. He moved back to the city and changed apartments. Threw away his hiking gear. Deleted every map app. Erased his Reddit profile where his post about Hollow Creek had first gained traction. But it was too late. People had read it, replied, asked for details. Some even claimed they were going. He tried to warn them, briefly. Then he stopped, because the dreams started. They came first in fragments, trees too tall, roots shaped like fingers, red triangles blooming on his ceiling like mold, Tessa's voice echoing in reverse, his own reflection blinking when he didn't. Then the waking visions. In crowds he'd glimpse a flash of white, like a marker painted on a coat sleeve. On the subway, he'd hear the faint chime that once accompanied the forest's mimicry. Worst were the mirrors. He started covering them. All of them, because when he looked too long he saw the other Joshes. Smiling, waiting. One day he got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside, a recorder. His recorder. He hadn't seen it since the trail. When he pressed play, his voice came through. This is Josh Henderson. Recording this in case I forget. I made it out. But something came with me. I feel it at night. I think I've been edited. Then silence. Then Tessa's voice. You weren't the one who left. He dropped the recorder. Burned it. It didn't melt. The fire hissed and turned cold around it. Eventually, it vanished from his apartment. That's when the people around him began to change. His coworker, Maya, one day called him Jason without correcting herself. His reflection started wearing the wrong shirts. An ex-girlfriend emailed him to say, I dreamed of you last night. You were in a forest. You weren't you anymore. He went back to therapy. Told no one the full story. Eventually, he got a new job. A new place. Tried again. But the loops never ended. 10 months later, an Outdoors podcast released an episode titled Lost Loops, The Trail You Can't Unfind. The host mentioned Hollow Creek. Talked about rumors of a place where time folded and voices weren't your own. Played a clip from an anonymous tip. Josh's voice, saying, if you find it, walk backward. Don't talk. Don't listen. The trail wants more of you. The episode went viral. A new Reddit thread popped up. Dozens of people asked, where's the trailhead? A few replied with GPS coordinates. One posted a picture of a white triangle carved into a tree in West Virginia. Another shared a photo of her palm. A gray ring spreading from a small, shallow cut. A user named Hollow Echo commented, you don't leave Hollow Creek. You just end up somewhere else it needs you. That account was later deleted. But before it disappeared, it posted one final comment. The trail isn't in the woods. It's in the recording. Josh doesn't use microphones anymore. He covers his ears during interviews. He avoids forests, yes, but he also avoids radios, TVs, even echoes in stairwells. He's not sure he ever left. He's not sure if the Josh who walked out was him or a backup. The only thing he knows is this. Every night, at exactly 2:47 a.m., someone walks past his door. Soft footfalls, too soft to be his neighbors. And when he listens close, they whisper, we made room. One more step. One more you. And once, only once, he whispered back, who stayed? And the voice answered, in perfect mimicry of Tessa, not me. If you're still brave enough to hike after that, subscribe for more true horror that blurs the line between nature and nightmare. Until next time, stay on the trail, and whatever you do, don't follow the red markers.